Stop explaining yourself. Every unnecessary explanation is a silent request for approval, and approval is the lowest form of power. Watch powerful people carefully. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't scramble to clarify every opinion. They don't panic when misunderstood. They let silence do the heavy lifting. Because the person who can tolerate being misunderstood controls the frame. Most people don't lose respect because they are weak. They lose respect because they are predictable, always available, always agreeable, always explaining. And when you are easy to manage, you become easy to ignore. People don't consciously decide to disrespect you. They simply feel that they can. And feelings decide hierarchy faster than logic ever will. Long before you speak, people are already calculating how much pressure can this person handle? How quickly do they react? Do they need approval to feel stable? Human beings constantly scan for status signals, not because they are evil, but because social hierarchy has always determined access to resources, protection, and influence. Psychologists call this rapid evaluation thin slice judgment. Research shows people form stable impressions of dominance, competence, and confidence within seconds of seeing someone, often before a single word is spoken. Which means you are communicating something even when you think you are saying nothing. The question is, what are you signaling? Most people signal uncertainty without realizing it. They over-explain small decisions. They apologize for things that need no apology. They rush to fill every silence. They try to control how they are perceived. And ironically, that attempt to control perception makes them appear less powerful, because power does not chase approval. Power assumes position. One of the most overlooked dominance signals is response timing. Studies in social psychology show that people perceived as higher status often display lower reaction urgency. They pause before responding. They think before speaking. They show no visible pressure to immediately resolve tension. Not because they are slow, because they are not threatened by the moment. Silence creates psychological gravity. Most people cannot tolerate it. Silence makes insecurities audible. When a person feels uncertain, they try to fill the gap quickly. They explain more than necessary. They talk faster. They reveal more information than required. And information is leverage. Negotiation research consistently shows that people who reveal less emotional volatility are perceived as more authoritative. Emotional self-regulation is often mistaken for emotional absence. But the strongest individuals are not emotionless. They are selective with expression. They do not suppress emotion. They contain it. Because uncontrolled emotion transfers control to the environment. If someone can provoke you easily, they can influence you easily. Emotional reactions expose priorities, and exposed priorities reveal pressure points. That is why composure has always been associated with leadership, not because leaders feel less, but because they reveal less unintentionally. Consider this. When someone challenges you unexpectedly, your first impulse is often defensive explanation. You try to clarify your intention. You try to correct the misunderstanding. You try to regain control of perception. But the faster you rush to repair your image, the more you signal that your image is fragile. And fragile signals invite testing. Social environments constantly test stability, not consciously, but behaviorally. People interrupt those who appear interruptible. They challenge those who appear easily shaken. They respect those who appear internally anchored. Calm behavior under pressure signals internal certainty, and certainty is contagious. People often mirror the emotional state of the most stable individual in the room. Neuroscience research on emotional contagion shows that humans unconsciously synchronize expressions, tone, and posture with those around them. The person least affected by tension often sets the emotional baseline. This is why controlled stillness often feels powerful. Not because stillness dominates others, but because stillness suggests self-dominance. And self-dominance is the foundation of social influence. Many people attempt to appear confident through louder communication, but loudness is not authority. Clarity is. Economy of words signals cognitive precision. Speaking less often increases perceived weight of each statement. When every thought is expressed, no single thought feels important. Scarcity creates value. This principle applies to communication as much as economics. Over-communication reduces perceived importance. Measured communication increases perceived intention. Research in leadership perception shows that concise communicators are often rated as more competent than those who provide excessive elaboration. Not because they know more, but because they appear more certain about what matters. Certainty attracts trust, even when certainty is quiet. Another misunderstood dynamic is approval seeking. When a person constantly monitors how they are being perceived, their attention splits between action and impression. Split attention reduces presence. Reduced presence reduces perceived authority. People trust individuals who appear internally aligned, not those constantly adjusting themselves mid-conversation. Micro adjustments signal dependency on feedback. Dependency signals vulnerability, and visible vulnerability invites hierarchy positioning. Humans instinctively categorize, not because they want to dominate, because categorization simplifies social navigation. Your behavior tells people where to place you. Not your words, your reactions, your pace, your willingness to tolerate disagreement, your comfort with silence. Power rarely announces itself. It reveals itself through behavioral consistency. Consistency reduces unpredictability, and predictability builds trust. But there is a difference between being predictable and being easily controlled. People respect boundaries they cannot easily bend, not aggressive boundaries, stable ones. Calm firmness communicates self-respect. Self-respect teaches others how to treat you. Most people try to earn respect through accommodation. But excessive accommodation often signals fear of disapproval. Fear of disapproval signals negotiable identity. Negotiable identity invites pressure. Pressure tests limits. Limits define hierarchy. Hierarchy defines influence. And influence often determines whose voice shapes the environment. The silent power protocol is not about manipulating others. It is about stabilizing yourself enough that manipulation becomes difficult. When you no longer rush to justify every decision, you reduce unnecessary exposure. When you no longer react instantly to every challenge, you reduce visible pressure points. When you no longer seek constant reassurance, you reduce external dependency, and reduced dependency increases perceived autonomy. Autonomy signals capability. Capability attracts respect. Respect changes interactions, not because people consciously decide to treat you differently, but because your behavior changes what feels possible in your presence. People often assume power is dominance over others, but the most stable form of power is dominance over impulses. The impulse to defend, the impulse to explain, the impulse to be liked. When these impulses no longer control behavior, behavior becomes deliberate. Deliberate behavior appears intentional. Intentional people appear difficult to influence. And people who appear difficult to influence are often treated carefully. Not feared, but considered. And being considered changes everything. Because the person who controls their reactions controls their direction. And direction determines outcome. You do not need to become cold. You do not need to become distant. You do not need to become someone else. You need to become less reactive to environments that constantly test stability. Most people never realize how often they are being evaluated, not judged morally, but assessed behaviorally. Every interaction updates someone's internal model of you. Over time, those models shape opportunity, trust, and influence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. And the person comfortable inside that space rarely needs to fight for attention, because attention often moves toward what appears grounded. The question is not whether others respect you. The question is whether your behavior signals that respect is expected, and expectations quietly shape reality. If you are ready to stop being pawn and start being players, subscribe to Hidden Manipulator now and comment, "I am unstoppable."